wanted to know about self-publishing but didn't know who to ask. This is Brooke Warner, and I'm the publisher of She Writes Press, and I'm here with Howard Van Ness, the president of Let's Write Books. I know that some of you have been on our previous webinars, and we wanted to take an opportunity tonight to just do Q&A. You know, there have been so many questions that have come up, and so this is going to be interactive and fun and get some of the questions answered that are left over from other webinars and or new questions. And so here we are. Welcome, Howard.
Well, thanks, Brooke. Thanks, everybody, for being on the call. We look forward to this webinar and answering your questions.
All right. So a lot of people sent questions in advance, which we appreciate. So thank you to all of you who did. And if you sent a question to me, you're going to see your question here on the slideshow. If you have a question, please type it into the questions box. And we're going to do our best to answer all of the questions tonight. You know, I'm sure some of the people asking in the questions box might find their question has already been answered by someone, so that's great. But go ahead and get those out as we talk, and I think we're going to launch right in. All right, so here we go. You're going to start to see some of the questions that were asked in advance, and we're going to, let's see, there we go. Okay. So Howard and I are going to kind of take turns and tag team here. How do you grow your platform without flooding Twitter and Facebook with self-advertising? I mean, I would like to start by saying that platform is not about self-advertising at all. It's about giving good content. It's about giving interesting content. And I know a lot of people on the call are novelists, and they start to wonder, you know, how does that pertain to me? How do I do interesting content? And I've brought this up lots and lots of times, and I think that novelists just need to wrap their minds around it, you know, that all of you writing novels have issues at the core of your novels, and that you need to be thinking about what those issues are and how you can use those issues to drive your platform. And so there's a great example, I may have mentioned her before, a woman who's a She Writes Press author. Her name is Mary Hutchings Reed. She did a book called Warming Up. It's a novel, and at its core, the book is about homelessness. It's about homeless teens, and one of her protagonists is a homeless teen. And so one of the ways that she's been working to build her platform is around doing some advocacy for homelessness. Now, that's just one example, and of course, your book may be, you know, all sorts of different from that, but it's really engaging yourself to think outside the box about what is your novel about, or if you have prescriptive or nonfiction, it's much simpler. But a platform is really about gathering people around who like the issues that you have to discuss, and having some exposure around those issues. So I would argue on this first question that it's in fact not about self-advertising, and that that's not a way to build a platform.
I would agree, Brooke, and I would like to add that it's also about engaging people on Twitter and Facebook. And I think one of the great things you can do on Facebook to engage people when you're a writer is talk about your book and get people's input. You could test out various plots, you could test out various characters, you can test out various actions, and get people engaged that way. You can put up various covers and ask people what they think of them. You can put up different titles. So there's lots and lots of ways to get people engaged. You can ask people what they think that your protagonist should be doing next, and you can build your book that way. And there's all kinds of possibilities for engagement. And as Brooke said, advertising is a very, very small percentage of what you want to be doing with Twitter and Facebook. You want to be engaging them in other ways with other kinds of content, and then maybe 10% of the time or 15% of the time doing some self-promotion, like I'm going to be at, or I'd like to announce my new book. But really, it's all about content and engagement.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right, let's keep going since we have so many good questions. I also want to say that we're getting a lot of questions in the panel about Kindle singles. So everybody, hang on, because we do have lots of good stuff on Kindle singles coming up in a slide or two.
Okay. So what factors should you consider when deciding whether to self-publish with the likes of CreateSpace or with hybrid publisher like She Writes Press? Well, definitely you just want to go with She Writes Press.
Thanks, Howard.
There's no discussion here. Okay, great question. Well, first of all, CreateSpace and others like that, really the way I view them is they are a printer, basically, who offers some publishing services. And yeah, I see CreateSpace as a great source for printing and fulfillment through Amazon. Um, Basically, that's the beginning and end of the story. I've talked to far too many people who struggle with using services like this. They don't get the attention they require. They don't get the kind of quality and design they desire. I'm not here to put down CreateSpace. I'm just telling you what they're good at and what they're not good at. When you come to a publisher like She Writes Press or the services that I provide, you're going to be dealing directly most of the time with the person who's the president or publisher of our firms, or a person right next to us. You're going to get a lot of quality attention by people who have been in the industry for a long, long time, who want to guide you and shepherd you through the process. If you go to CreateSpace, you're going to get somebody who you're lucky to talk to once every 2 or 3 weeks via email. It's going to be a very, very frustrating experience. When it comes time to print your book, however, then you might want to consider CreateSpace. So this brings up a little bit a broader subject of what and who is a publisher, what do they do, and I think there's a lot of definitions of that. And when we think about getting books published, we have to ask ourselves, are we talking about getting the book printed? Are we talking about distribution? Are we talking about a traditional publisher? Are we talking about an ebook publisher? Are we talking about a hybrid publisher? I think it's important to get really clear when we think about publishing who and what we're dealing with.
Yeah, thank you. And I would say that, with She Writes Press, we're really starting to talk about it as partnership publishing at this point. It seems to be a term that's arising that I feel very comfortable with because it is partnership publishing. The author is paying up front, but it is absolutely a traditional press model. And so that's very different from CreateSpace. And with CreateSpace, they're oftentimes putting you into a templated kind of experience. Whereas with a partnership house, whether it's She Writes or elsewhere, you're getting a lot of individuated attention. So that's just important to understand the relationships that you're having. And then Janet Oakley in the window here is asking about distribution. Thank you, because I think that's relevant here. Distribution is a big question, and the Lightning Source, for instance, and CreateSpace have these sort of extended distribution things that you're discussing. But most bookstores, small bookstores especially, really hate Amazon because Amazon is basically trying to put them out of business. And so my local bookstore, Book Passage in Marin, they will not carry CreateSpace books. They will take Lightning Source books, so there are ways around this, but it's important to understand the relationship dynamics that are at hand. She Writes Press is, on the verge of moving toward a bigger distribution agreement with a company called Ingram. Some of you might be familiar with them. So what's happening in the market is that traditional distributors who used to not take on these kinds of presses are taking on these kinds of presses. So I've said it so many times, we're in the middle of a publishing revolution. So many things are changing. And so you want to just get really clear about what each of these things offers and understand that what Howard said, which is just, brilliant, which is that some of these things are just printing options. You're not getting hand-holding and, really understanding the services that you're buying and not necessarily just, you've got to compare apples to apples when you're comparing the pricing, because like our model is $3,900 and CreateSpace is something like $2,400. Well, that's a big difference, but we offer proofreading and we offer custom cover design and we offer a relationship with the project manager. So you want to just really be looking at everything that each option has to offer and then be looking at the costs associated with that. So thank you to whoever asked that question. What is the single best marketing strategy? And I will get to some of the questions in the window here briefly, but let's keep going with what we got here. What's the single best marketing strategy work for there's a misplaced word there, for an about to be published writer to perform while waiting for publication? You want to take that one, Howard?
Sure. I think that's a really great question. the single best marketing strategy. Well, I guess I would have to say it's uh, a web of things. First and foremost, you're going to need a website. If you don't have your website up, you want to be working on that. You want to be establishing your platform on Facebook, and Twitter, and perhaps other social media. Maybe creating a database of people who you're going to announce your book to, and maybe creating a press release while you're sitting there waiting. And you want to start your press as early as possible, just like your social media as early as possible. It's not any one thing. It's all these things. Marketing is like a pie. It has different pieces, and you have to do all of them to get the maximum results from it. So these beginning things that I mentioned are really critical and foundational. You could also be doing a book trailer and getting that up on YouTube. And you could be pre-selling your book. You could be announcing it to people and getting them excited about it, showing the front cover and maybe some sample pages from the inside on your website, and drive people to it and get some early sales. Would be another strategy. So there's a lot that you can do initially before your book is published, but it's really important that you do that stuff before it's published. So when the book hits, you can be in good timing with that and start to generate sales, and that's really important because you don't want your book to sit there not doing anything. That's the worst thing that could happen to it, especially if it is up on Amazon. They want to see something happening to it. Do you have anything you want to add to that, Brooke?
No, I think that those are all fantastic ideas, and I just want to address something because sometimes some of these people are sort of in tandem. We're talking and doing interactive stuff here, and Judy in the window, question window here is asking, without public speaking, what's the best way to drive people to your opt-in pages? And I think this kind of goes hand in hand with thinking about this. Howard was talking about the database. To define what an opt-in page is for people, it's a landing page where someone can opt into your newsletter or opt into your database, basically. And I think a lot of these things that Howard just mentioned in terms of the online strategies are really good strategies, because yes, public speaking is great, but in public speaking you're expecting that those people are going to go home and sign up for your database. Well, they're not. Some of them might if they really, really love you. I saw someone public speak, where in the front of the room he had a fishbowl and he said, give me your business card, and he told everyone, I'm going to put you in my database, but you can win an iPad, not an iPad, a mini, a little thing, not an iPad, but a small, whatever those music ones are. And so I think that that's good because his investment was, maybe $100 or whatever those little things cost. And then he got all of those names because it was a big room. But for those of you who don't understand the power of a database, you definitely want to think about how valuable they are for selling your book. Because I posted this on Facebook the other day, and someone said, oh, I don't have a database, but I don't need one because I connect with everyone on Facebook. Well, that's not the same. I really need to drive home the value of a database over Facebook, because you don't have any connection to people in Facebook other than like when they happen to be online and when they're checking in with you. They could opt out of your page, and granted they can opt out of your databases too, but it's a completely different enterprise. So really all of you who are about to be published, if you don't have a database or a setup like MailChimp or iContact or something like that on your website yet, I would argue that that would be your number one thing to get going on.
Yeah, I want to add to that, Brooke. I tell people that developing a database is the single most important thing that you could do to develop your career as an author, and actually in any business enterprise. And the reason for that is, well, let's say for a moment that 2 years have come and gone, you've collected 5,000 names in your database, and you're ready to release your third book. And you can let those 5,000 people know that you're releasing that third book, and you're going to get some sales. Let's say you'll get 10% of those 5,000 people because you've been in contact with them via your newsletter and other kinds of communication, so that you have a relationship with them. They trust you, they like you, they're your fans. So when you come out, when you come out with your next book or product, you'll be able to let them know directly, and they will buy it. So let's say 500 people buy your third book. Well, if you're making $10 a book in profit, well, there's $5,000. So your list becomes really powerful. If it was 10,000 people on your list, all of a sudden you're making $10,000. If you had 100,000 people on your list and 10,000 people bought it, well, that would be almost $100,000. So it's got an incredible power. And if you're not doing that, you should make that your #1 priority. That's as important as anything else in publishing.
And use us as an example. You know, go to my website, warnercoaching.com, go to Howard's website, letswritebooks.net, and, you know, on mine I have a free report I offer. Do that to incentivize people to sign up. You know, and that's the #1 thing that you want to do, you know, on your topic. Give people something free. Not only is it an incentive because you're giving them something free, it should actually be very valuable, you know, something that gives them information that they like, that they go, okay, this person has good content, and then they pay attention. So, you know, there's lots of different services to do this, but, you know, we both agree that it's a hugely important thing to do. Someone's saying, Howard, that your audio is difficult to hear. I don't know if you can turn it up a little bit, but if you can, that would be great.
Okay, so, let's see what we can do.
Cool.
Can you hear? I'm sorry. Can you hear me? Okay.
That sounds good to me.
Brooke?
Yep.
Okay.
Now maybe he's losing us. Okay. So here's a question from the window that I want to take because it seems an important one. Should someone do a blog tour 1 month prior to publishing your book? And I am going to answer that one to say no. You want to make sure to do your blog tour while or when the book is available. Blog tours are awesome, and they're great ways to get people to buy your book, but the whole point is that you need to have a click-through link and make sure that it's available. So there's a lot of things you can do prior to publication, but blog tour is one of the things that you want to do once the book is available.
I agree.
Okay. So Howard, let's see, we want to take this question. Do you know of anyone who can set up a website to promote my nearly completed book? Maybe we have a place that we can turn people on to.
You know, I don't. I actually have a couple people that I work with, but they need direction, and I would not feel comfortable giving the names directly of the people I work with for that reason. However, if you wanted to go outside of my services or Brooks to someplace that could help you find somebody to do that, then I would check out Elance. Or guru.com, so ELANCE.com or
I'll put it in the window.
Okay, great. And those are two websites that are freelance directories, and you can post a job and get proposals from people all over the world, and you can compare. You know, you'll see examples of their web work, and you'll be able to communicate with them in advance via their chat room or on Skype, and get to know them a little bit before you hire them. But in terms of somebody specific, I can't recommend anybody in this moment.
Okay, good. And there's an association called the Association of Independent Authors, I believe. Again, this is on my homepage. If you go to the homepage and scroll all the way down to the bottom, which is warnercoaching.com, I have a link to them, and they have a great resource section as well. So I'm sorry I don't have the URL on hand because my screen is being taken up by the slideshow here, but you can check it out that way, and I think that they're another great resource. Okay, how do you price a Kindle book? Can you use the same cover art as another book you're working on and just use a different title? Howard?
Okay, all right. So how do you price a Kindle book? Great question. So generally, Kindle books are priced less than a hard copy of the book, and there are some different strategies to doing this. You know, first of all, we have to decide how many pages is the book. So if the book is only, say, 30 pages, it's going to be a low price book. If it is, 250 to 300 pages, then there's potential for charging quite a bit more. The second thing, we have to look at what our competitors are doing, our competition is doing. How different is your material? In other words, have you created some piece of work that is so amazing and it doesn't exist out there and is so valuable to humankind that you can charge a premium for it? Um, Also, we have to consider, are you a new author? Do you have a following? And if not, then you want your book to be a little less than what your competitors are, at least to start. Because when you have your book a little less to start, it's a little easier for people to buy. And then in relationship to Amazon, there are some considerations. So when your book is priced below $2.99 and over $9.95, your $9.99, your royalty is going to be only 35%. If your book is
30.
between 30, excuse me, thank you. If your book is priced between $2.99 and $9.99, then you're going to get 70%. So Amazon has a sweet spot that they want you to be in, and they're going to pay you for it. Now, with that being said, you have to decide, are you going to sell enough books under $2.99 to make up for that? And I would, say to you, no. And I would say that once you start getting under $2.99, that your book is going to be devalued a little bit by the nature of the price. So I would say the lowest in most cases that you'd want to go is $2.99. You could have 99 cents there for a few days to get some sales, because we want to see sales right away, and then quickly up the price. And this is a beautiful thing about the Kindle platform, is that you're able to adjust the price daily if you want to, and sometimes twice a day. So I think that those are the major considerations that you want to look at in doing your book. And again, generally they're less than the hard copy of the book, and we want to make them less than the hard copy of the book because they're getting digital information, and it costs Amazon nothing to download the book to the customer. All right, the second part, can you use the same cover art as another book you're working on with a different title? I would say no, absolutely not, because you have a different book. If you're asking the question, I'm not quite sure the question, if you're working on the same title, then you can use the same art. You would use the same art, and basically your Kindle book and your hard copy book would be synced by Amazon. But if you're using a different title, then you would have to change the cover art.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect. All right, we have like 5 more pages of questions and tons of questions in the windows. I don't know that we're going to get to everything today, but I do want to take Manona's question here, because you're just on the last page. I do have it, but it says the question of copyright. Does She Writes Press or Create Space, does the author retain the copyright? And the answer is yes. The author, you always retain the copyright. She Writes Press files the copyright on behalf of the authors. I don't know what Create Space does, but authors are very concerned about copyright, and Create Space doesn't want to own the copyright to your book. No publisher does. You, the author, always retain the copyright to your own work, but the publishers are the publishers of record. So the way that this works in the industry, no matter who you publish with, the publisher owns the exclusive right to publish your work, and then once they declare your book out of print, you have to ask for the rights back. So what the publisher owns is the right to publish. Generally, they want it to be exclusive. She Writes Press definitely wants it to be exclusive. I'm sure Create Space does too, because they don't want you then going out and publishing it on 2 different platforms, which doesn't make sense because you would be competing, with another entity. So, but on the question of copyright, you own it. If you go with Create Space, you probably have to file for it yourself, but it's a pretty easy process to file, and you can just look that up by Googling, how do I file copyright? Okay, moving on to page 2, and I'm going to try to work through some of these window questions just so you know. And I'm thinking if we could try to move through some of these things a little quickly just so that we can try to move on to some of the stuff. Like these next 2 questions are pretty straightforward. What do you think about bundling my book with a link to an online communications app that ties into my novel? Creative idea. Right, Howard? I mean, do you think that this is pretty doable?
Well, I think the app is a great idea. I'm not quite sure about the word bundling, what that means, but if you're saying that I'm going to have a book and I'm going to have an app, and they're going to relate to each other, I think that's fabulous. I think that's a great idea. One will definitely help sell the other. I mean, you can make your app available directly or in companionship with the book by telling people that they can get it, but I don't know how you would sell both at the same time unless you did it from your own site in some way.
Yeah, or you can put a link in on the inside of your book to promote it. That's another thing to do. So you got to think of creative ways to let people know about it. And then is it best to work with a local publicist, or do you want a big city publicist from New York or LA? It totally depends on your book, 100%, and your budget. So your big city publicists are going to be more expensive, but a local publicist can start small. You got to make sure when you're interviewing publicists that you ask them what their campaign strategy is, and that you definitely just want to ask the questions and know what you're getting into. So it depends. Oops, sorry, I bumped forward there. Okay. For a relative beginner with the social media stuff, what would be your top 3 recommendations? How should a beginner spend his or her time on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, LinkedIn, Goodreads, etc.? You want me to take this one?
Yeah, I have some thoughts too, so why don't you go ahead and I'll chime in afterwards.
I think, when you're starting with social media, you want to start with a few things. I mean, maybe 2 things, and then this is my opinion. We'll see what Howard says, but I believe that you want to, kind of get a firm handle on Facebook and Twitter to start. You could do all of them, but it's very overwhelming. And so my sense, and this is a strategy that I recommend for people just getting started, is to post on Facebook once or twice a day and to post on Twitter 3 to 5 times a day. And to link your Facebook and your Twitter accounts in the beginning. You may decide later that you want to unlink them, but the way that works is that Facebook, anything you post automatically goes out to Twitter. So then if you're posting twice a day to Facebook and 4 times a day to Twitter, you end up with 6 tweets a day because the 2 from Facebook are coming over. And, on one's own blog, the beginner, again, start with something manageable, like once a month or once every other week, and see how that goes for you. I think that people who dive in too strong, too fast, can quickly get overwhelmed. Some people love this stuff, and that's not you. You may just be like, oh, that's not my problem, and that's awesome, but more often than not, I find that writers feel that this stuff can be that the expectations are incredibly high for what they're supposed to do. And I would just urge you all to be a little careful of the supposed to, and understand that, yes, building a platform is important, but a platform can be built in an incremental way.
That's great, Brooke, and that's really sage advice. I just want to add that I think that a blog is really important. So if I were going to pick 3 things, I would pick Facebook, Twitter, and a blog. And the reason why I picked blog is because for SEO purposes, search engine optimization purposes, and you can weave your blog together with Facebook and Twitter, and that becomes more powerful. So I would say that that adding the blog to that mix is really important.
Yeah. All right. Great.
So
yeah.
Do you want to take a question, or you want me to read this next one?
Yeah, let's take a question. Let's see. Well, this is just sort of a addendum to that one, which is, what do you think about using Hootsuite for all your social media accounts? And I'll put that in the window. But yeah, I think Hootsuite is great. New things like this are coming out all the time where you can kind of manage. Tweet Adder is another one that's really popular right now. I mean, it's just for Twitter, but there are so many things that people are inventing all the time to make your social media life a little more manageable. But the thing that you have to remember if you're using Hootsuite is that, if you're not tending to those pages, then people know. So I use Hootsuite and I love it, but I also check my Twitter and my Facebook accounts every day. And if you are just putting out on Hootsuite like blah, 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 and then you're not checking to see if people are commenting or responding back to you, or if you're not thanking them for retweeting you, there is an etiquette to social media that you want to pay attention to. And, so just make sure that you're not just using Hootsuite to put out a bunch of stuff and then not tending to your relationship. All right.
Okay.
Want to go for the next question?
Sure. How do novelists promote their book? It seems most advice is for nonfiction writers with hot topics. My novel, How She Saved Her Life, is a tale of a mature heroine, 50 years old, coping with family, business, arson, love, her young lover / business partner on her family's large property in the Berkshire Hills in western Massachusetts. she started a new business, but the town doesn't want her there. Well, it sounds like a fun read to me. So do you want to address this, or you want me to first?
Yeah, if you have something to say, go for it, and I can add to it, or I can start.
Okay. So contrary to popular belief, I don't think there's a lot of separation to marketing fiction and nonfiction. Of course, hot topics. I'm not quite sure what the person who wrote this question is referring to, but the um, the thing about novels, any book, I'm going to address it to Amazon, A, because that's an area where I have a lot of strength, and also because 70% of all books are sold on Amazon. Um, that we have to have something in the title or subtitle that allows people to find your book. So unless you're, extremely well-known author, then people are going to tend to not find your book unless it is optimized for the Amazon search engine. So the way that we do that is by picking keywords um, that are searchable. And the way that you do that is if you go to the Amazon page at the top where you'll see a little search bar, you can start plugging in words that you think people might use to search for your book. Maybe it is love affairs, or maybe it's about love or family or romance. And you can start there, and you'll start seeing different words and a series of words pop up. And these are words that are searchable on Amazon. So um, once you find these words, then you can start working them into your subtitle or even your title, and that will help people find your book a little easier there. Also, you want to use those words in your description. So the Amazon page is really important. All the things that we use for nonfiction are also important in fiction. What is the title? What is the subtitle? What does the cover look like? Cover is really, really important. What is the description like? Is the description juicy? Is it getting me excited? Is it showing some of your best writing? Are you are you making people motivated to buy your book? Are you asking them to buy your book? So we want to have a call to action at the end of the description. So that's just on the Amazon page, but just like we had mentioned before about what to do with social media and in fiction. Let's talk about your characters. Let's bring them to life a little bit. Let's find out what people think about them. So there's all kinds of things that can be done with social media around your novel as well, or your fiction, and the same thing on your blog. Why did you start writing this book? What do you hope people are to get from it after they do read it? Reading opportunities, going out into the world, whether it be your local Barnes and Noble or independent bookstore. There's opportunities to read your book, to present it. I think there's a lot of opportunity to market your book, whether it's fiction or nonfiction.
Absolutely. I mean, locally, I live in the Bay Area, but there's a thing called Story Circle where people read from their books, and they're largely novels and poetry. I mean, I think non-novelists a lot of times get into like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, this doesn't pertain to me, it's not relevant, but there's a little bit of like, just not being able to see beyond this limited scope. When people are speaking about nonfiction, there are so many things that you really can extrapolate and use for yourself, but it's super important that you start to think about the issues that are in your book as a novelist, because just like a memoirist, you have issues and themes, and your characters are going through things. So I think it's highly important, just to kind of recalibrate the way that you think about your novel, and that it's not just this little story, that's not relevant to the larger world. It completely is, no matter what you're writing about. So, that's my advice to novelists, to kind of get on board with a new way of thinking about how your book exists and how you see your book as something ultimately that has promotional value. So,
we could spend the rest of the time talking about marketing fiction and nonfiction. We could do a whole 4-week, we could do a whole 10-week series just on marketing. So there are many ways to do that. Unfortunately, in the scope of our call tonight, we can just give you a few ways, but the ones that I've mentioned and what Brooke is telling you I think are top of line. These are where we want to start.
Yeah, great. Okay, cool. So let's move to the next page of questions. We're definitely not going to get through all the questions today, but we're doing our best. Okay, so let me just blow through a couple of these in a fast way because some of them are the same. You know, what's the best way to find blogs related to your interest group besides using Google? And I think the best way is to find one and see who they follow. You know, I mean, lots of places have blog roles. It's very common. If they don't, you can always email the people. Like every blog that I know of has contact me, you know, and just contact them and say, what are your top 5 blogs? You know, there's lots of ways to do this. Follow them on Facebook and see who they're following. Follow them on Twitter and see who they're following. Who are they retweeting? I mean, I retweet the same people week after week after week because I dig those people and I like what they say. And so, you know, if you want to find out who I like, you just look and see who I'm retweeting. So that's something to consider. And then I'm going to say for, you know, recommending for ebook covers and for developmental editing, you know, that She Writes Press has resources, Howard has resources, and you can contact us. You know, our resources are not going to be the cheapest people out there. Howard lots of times has recommended Fiverr, which I will put in the window. It has Fiverr with 2 R's. And you can get really, really cheap stuff, but obviously we can't speak to the quality. You know, sometimes it's going to be great and sometimes it's not. And for developmental editing, same thing. Elance and other places are great, and She Writes Press has a whole stable of editors who are awesome, and I highly recommend them, obviously, and recommend them. So, yeah, lots of these are kind of in the same vein. So I know that people really want to talk about singles, and we had a good single question here, so I'm sorry, I'm going to skip over a couple of these and talk about the Kindle single option, and I apologize if I'm here, this one at the top. I'm still confused. The last presentation, that was Howard's presentation about singles, not about singles, where he focused one component on singles, but people were very interested in it. Can you publish a chapter of a book as a Kindle single? It seems to say that you can't. It has to be self-contained and not a chapter of another work. So can I say something? I'm just going to preface this, and then Howard can sort of take the lead on it. The Kindle single program, they do not allow you to publish previously published work. And my idea around how to publish a chapter of an existing book as a contained, you know, so it's true that you can't just plop a chapter 14 out of your novel and put it into a Kindle single, but you wouldn't want to do that because it has no context and it has no beginning, middle, and an end. So a single does have to be self-contained. It has to be a reading experience. And I think it's important to know, though, if you wanted to publish a component of your novel, for instance, or a story, you self-contain it. You know, you create a different ending, or you end it on a cliffhanger. You know, you end it in some way that makes it feel self-contained. So, you know, clearly there are ways to do this, you know, and it is the case that Amazon is basically saying, don't send us stuff that feels like it's just plucked out of the middle of your book, and I think that that makes sense. Your readership wouldn't want that either.
Also, first of all, I want to clarify, you know, the term Kindle single. Some people use Kindle single meaning Kindle, a Kindle book, and these are 2 different things. A Kindle book, you can do anything you want, pretty much. If you want to put up a chapter of your book and call it a Kindle, that's absolutely fine. And if you want to use that same content in your actual book that is longer, that's fine too. So you can have your content up in both places, and that's fine. As a Kindle single, as Brooke has pointed out, you can't do that. However, in reading the Amazon site for submitting a Kindle, you can have your Kindle book up as, you can have your Kindle single as a Kindle book while they're deciding whether or not they want to make a Kindle single out of it. So you can do that. If your book is accepted as a Kindle single and then you put it up as a Kindle first, great. You know, all the power to you. You want to getting a Kindle single is a feather in your cap. It's very prestigious. It's going to make you a lot of money. It's going to get you known quickly, and it's definitely something you want. On the other hand, if your Kindle single is not accepted, then absolutely use it as a Kindle.
Great, perfect.
You can package it up, and that's a great thing to do sometimes because it's an entree to your work, and that is a place where you might want to sell your book for 99 cents. It's 30 pages, and it's a porthole book to your other books. Why not? Go for it, 99 cents.
Perfect. Yep, exactly. I want to take one question. We're going to wrap up here pretty soon, but this one on the previous page about iUniverse, at the bottom, I wonder what you think of as iUniverse as a publishing option. I don't really have the context for whether Penguin invented print-on-demand technology. I don't know. But, you know, will my Create Space books, in fact, never be shelved anywhere? I think this was coming from you know, some stuff that someone else had told this woman who asked the question. But I do want to speak to iUniverse, and some of you are asking about, you know, comparing Create Space and Lulu and iUniverse and She Writes Press. That would take, you know, and again, a full webinar to compare them. But what's important that you understand is that there are different kinds of self-publishing. Okay, iUniverse owns, or rather, I should say, Author Solutions is the name of a company that owns a whole bunch of publishing options. iUniverse is one of them. They also own Balboa, you know, which is actually an imprint of Heyday, or rather Hay House, excuse me. They own like 9 different imprints, and they were recently purchased by Penguin. Okay, so now Penguin owns them and all their problems because a lot of people are suing Author Solutions too. So I don't know. I mean, I have mixed feelings about this company. I don't think that they have great business practices. I think that a lot of authors are happy, a lot of authors are unhappy, in part just because they're massive. You know, they are truly massive, and one of the things that they do is they upsell. And so you enter into a publishing package at $2,000, and then you end up spending $10,000, and you're not even sure how that happened. So you just have to be careful. They're salespeople. They're not book people. So that
yeah, you know, a lot of I just want to jump in with a lot of these prepackaged companies offer things to you that cost a lot of money that are absolutely useless. Like, you know, they're going to create a lot of them have what they call publicity packages. You know, for $495, they're going to create a bookmark, a business card, and give you 100 postcards. That is ridiculous. You know, it's like none of those things are going to be really useful to you.
Yeah.
And especially at that price. So
exactly.
You have to look at, if you end up going with a company like this, understand 2 things that, or 3 things, as Brooke number 1 has pointed out, is that you're going through a mill. You know, you're just another number going quickly through stuff from people who are doing this as a job. You're not dealing with the principles of the company, and you're not going to get the kind of care and quality that you want. I mean, self-publishing is such a viable option these days, but if you go the wrong way, you're going to end up with a book that you're not proud of, and you don't want that to happen. You've worked too hard and too long on this stuff, and you want to make sure that you get quality. And I have to tell you, you know, I've talked to so many people in the last 9 months, a year, who have had trouble with these kinds of companies. You know, they can't get their files. They take forever to get back to them. They're not educating their authors along the way. And as Brooke said, they do these upsells for products and services that, quite honestly, you don't even need. Go to one of these. My advice to you is go to one of these companies and ask them how they're going to help market your books on Amazon. You know, what are they going to do to help sell your Kindle book? You know,
well, and most of them are going to say nothing. You know, I mean, most
exactly.
of them are going to sell you into a marketing program, but it's important to know, I mean, we also don't, you know, She Writes Press doesn't offer included marketing services, you know, so I think it's important to understand sort of, you know, what you're hiring out different people to do, because a publicist, you know, or a marketing expert or a publishing house, you know, everybody has different roles, you know, and so I think, you know, the marketing stuff is very specific. It's very tailored. I think that Howard in particular has, you know, this amazing knowledge, which is why I love partnering with him and bringing him, you know, on these kinds of webinars, especially for the She Writes community at large, because, you know, this is insider knowledge. You know, most publishing houses, I think She Writes Press to some degree is on the cutting edge, and yet, you know, the marketing support that we can offer if we wanted to do packages like this would be really expensive, you know, to tailor to all of your needs, and it's why we're trying to promote education. But, you know, some of the specific stuff that Howard has taught, like in his Kindle, the 4-week Kindle program that he did, I mean, my gosh, no publisher is doing that. They don't even know that some of the stuff that he knows exists, you know. So this is, again, I mean, to reiterate a point I've made so many times, that we're on the edge of a new frontier here. There are many things that can and are being done, and I come out of 13 years of traditional publishing. You know, I just left Seal Press last year, and, you know, the stuff that Howard has been teaching me is blowing my mind, you know, and I know a lot about traditional publishing. So this is really exciting stuff, and you know, some of the answers you're going to get from your publisher, from, you know, your partnerships or whatever, and some of them you have to seek out, you know, and really be looking for from people who have a different kind of expertise. So that's some important context, and leads us into, you know, we're going to wrap up today, and we do want to remind you all that our summit is coming up. You know, I know a lot of you have been on our previous calls, but this really is the last opportunity to register at our discounted price. So we want to just recap what we're going to be covering, and let you know it's June 1st and 2nd in Berkeley. If you enjoyed what you heard tonight, you know, we're going to be covering a million more things over 2 days. You can tell that there is enough content here for 2 days. I mean, we could probably do a week. It's such exciting stuff. So let's just recap the pieces here. You know, quadruple Amazon royalty payments, 5 key components to all successful books, how to build a fan base and a mailing list, what we talked about tonight, why it's the most important marketing activity. I mean, we got into it briefly, but there's a lot more to say on that. The range of publishing options and what is best for you. You know, this is, again, you guys want us to compare CreateSpace, iUniverse, you know, She Writes Press. We're going to get into that in a lot more detail, because, again, there's just so much to know. And again, you know, these are expensive mistakes people made, you know, when Howard's talking about what the kinds of people he's been talking to. And I've heard people made, you know, big expensive mistakes by publishing, you know, the wrong way. Designing and formatting your book, how to make it look like it was created by a big publishing house. You know, this is a huge, huge deal. You must do this. Advanced Kindle marketing strategies that ignite sales. That's Howard's domain. Awesome. Amazon singles. You know, Howard covered this on his last webinar, but there's a lot more to understand about this, as evidenced by so many questions that you guys have on Amazon singles and how exactly to do that. Insider publicity secrets, this is just an important one to note, because Lorna Garano is going to be our master publicist, who's doing a 1.5-hour breakout session at the summit, and she is awesome. You know, and you guys do need to be thinking about publicity. You want to be thinking about publicity early on. You know, you truly have one shot. So go out with a bang, you know, don't go out with a fizzle, and so much more. So tonight, you know, the big point is that this is their last opportunity to save $200 on Thursday morning. So tomorrow we're leaving this up because we're going to have the thing on YouTube. But Thursday morning, the price is going up to $5.95. Tonight and tomorrow you can register with the promo code only, because it is technically $4.95. But if you want to use the promo code and sign up with the self-pub deal, it is case sensitive, so check it out. And consider registering tonight, and you'll get the following opportunities: a free half-hour consult with Howard, or a free partial manuscript assessment by me. I will read 50 pages and give you a very thorough assessment of your work. This is tonight only, so if you register tomorrow, you don't get these options. And a free bonus lunch. So we're doing a lunch on Sunday, and those of you who register, it's a $100 value. We buy your lunch. You get to hang out with us. You get to ask us questions. So anyone who registers tonight will also get a freebie with that lunch, and so it's an additional 100. So we really love to see you there. We know it's a huge commitment for those of you who are out of town, but consider it. You know, we do have a lot of people flying in from cross country. There are some good travel options and hotel options on our site on the travel page, so take a look at that. And remember that this $395 is to bring a friend, you know, so it's basically $199 a piece. And yeah, find someone that you can tag along with you, and you guys will get a lot out of this. And, you know, Howard and I have fun when we're teaching together, so we hope that some of you will sign up tonight.
Brooke, you know, I so appreciate you going through all that stuff. One of the things that we didn't mention was that you'll also get a photograph, a headshot, which is worth $75. So this is an amazing offer. I mean, for $395, if you bring a friend, it's only half that. So for $199 for 2 days of this kind of quality of training is remarkable. Plus, you're going to get a free half-hour consult with myself or with Brooke, and that is worth anywhere from $1 to $150, plus the VIP lunch, which is worth $100. So this is an amazing amount of value for you guys, and we put together this kind of value because we really want to give you a strong incentive to show up. You know, we're very passionate about publishing and self-publishing, and we want to share with you our years of experience in all aspects of publishing, and we want to answer your questions. We want to help you become successful, and we would like to be your guides. And we put together what I think is an amazing 2 days of content for you, so that you can walk out of that summit and having a clear idea of what you need to do next and how to do it, and where to turn for resources and help. And you know, I'm really excited about this weekend, and I hope that you're considering coming to it, because you're just going to learn so much and have a lot of fun, and it's great to connect with other authors. I think one of the problems that we face as authors is that sometimes we become a little isolated by the very nature of our work, and it's great to connect with other writers and find out what they're doing and what they're working on, and what their successes and what their challenges have been, and all that will be there too.
Awesome. So thanks, everyone, and jump on over, register, send any questions you might have, take advantage of our offer. And again, you know, thanks so much for being on the webinar tonight. We appreciate all of you. We appreciate your questions. And if you feel, you know, sad that your questions didn't get answered, please don't hesitate to ask, you know, a specific question. You can email me by responding to, you know, any of the webinar announcements that have gone out. So we will see you in June, we hope. And again, thanks, everyone. Good night, Howard.
Thank you. Thank you, Brooke. Thanks, everybody, for being on the call.